Alright, you know the drill, I played 3 games this month, so let's get into it. I feel a little disingenuous giving episode Aigis a score this low, as it has some consistently top-notch character writing. Making Aigis the star of the show is the correct move. Frankly, it was something they should have done in the base game, but better late than never. Yukari has some really standout moments, and I will even admit to getting slightly misty-eyed at some moments toward the end there. But that's the thing, all the interesting stuff happens at the end. The entire plot of the game is concentrated in the last 3 hours. Now, you may notice that this game is in fact not a 5-hour adventure, but rather a 15-hour adventure. What are you doing for the remaining 12 or so hours then? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is Tartarus. Tartarus and only Tartarus. Choosing not to include any new social links in episode Aigis only serves to illustrate how truly bare-bones and dull the base game of Persona 3 Reload is. It's not that I wanted to tear my hair out playing episode Aigis, but the expansion seems to take a page out of the Persona 3 portable playbook in the sense that it has no respect for your time whatsoever. The whole expansion reeks of this meeting could have been an email. Ultimately, my problems with episode Aigis epitomize my problems with the Reload project as a whole. I would hesitate to call the devs unambitious, as whether or not you like the direction the remake took, it's undeniable that a lot of love went into making it. That being said, I do think the newbies on staff, who to my understanding were the ones in charge of this project, were too afraid to make any drastic changes to the original. People hail Persona 3 as a masterpiece, but I just can't agree. The pieces are there, but quite frankly they weren't assembled properly. Recently I've begun to grow weary of remakes that try to be a beat-for-beat recreation of their source material. The original games are still there for people to enjoy. Whether or not they're easily accessible is a separate topic of discussion, though in Persona 3's case, portable is available on modern platforms. And thus remakes, at least in my opinion, should be primarily concerned with either fixing the flaws apparent in the original, or bringing something new to the table. I'm not saying that every remake needs to go in a direction as drastic as Final Fantasy VII Remake, as that can open up its own can of worms, but at least show your players that you as an artist are learning from your mistakes. Whether it be out of respect for the original team or fear of fan backlash, the Reload team chose not to do that. As a 3-hour cutscene movie concluding the events of Persona 3 Reload, episode Aigis is a must, but as an actual bona fide video game, I can't recommend it. It's rare that I tell people to go look up the cutscenes on YouTube, as even with story-heavy games, I truly do believe that having the controller in your hands and interacting with the interactive medium is a different experience than watching someone else play it, but by paying $35 for episode Aigis, you're really just asking to have a solid 10 to 12 hours of your time wasted in order to get to the good stuff. That all having been said, Don't is a banger. And now, we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you a meditation on short video games. Earlier this year, I played Space Funeral and struggled to find anything meaningful to say about it, despite enjoying the experience. A general haziness that I largely chalked up to the game's paltry length. Now once again I find myself in a similar situation with how Fish is made. Aesthetically the game is phenomenal, and on paper it poses an interesting philosophical question. Unfortunately, the game's length necessitates that it does not get the proper time to thoroughly explore said question. Whereas a game with more length might be able to dive more into the yes versus no question, here the most the game is able to do is show how seeking the answer has seemingly driven the other fish insane. An interesting conceit, but not one backed up by much of substance. This lack of substance also explains why the game's horror largely falls flat for me. Having a killer aesthetic and tense sound design are all well and good, but if the game can't convince me that those elements are meaningfully building up to something, I'm not going to feel very scared. Though the interactive nature of gaming is the medium's main source of immersion, a large part of that for me is being able to engage with the game's mechanics and the world over an extended period of time. Games give players something to really sink their teeth into. At the same time, it seems reductive to say that games that clock in at under an hour or two simply aren't able to have the same impact as a game that runs for 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, and so on. 10 out of 10 3-minute songs exist, 10 out of 10 episodes of television that clock in at roughly half an hour exist. What is it about short games in particular that causes me to have a hard time engaging with them or otherwise meeting them at their own level? I pose this question rhetorically because honestly, I don't have a good answer for it. I'm more interested in creating a dialogue. I hear A Short Hike is good. Maybe I should check that out. See if it changes my mind. Bad Parenting, like 999, is a game I played with some friends this year. It's not something I would have really played on my own, but it does sort of fit in well with what I was talking about for how Fish is made, so I'm lumping it in here anyway. While Bad Parenting isn't what I'd call a masterful work, nor does it completely solve the problems I have with excessively short games as outlined in the prior segment on how Fish is made, it does a much better job utilizing its limited runtime despite the fact that it works with a much less original premise. To get my main critique of Bad Parenting out of the way, it has a number of cheap jump scares that, though are technically effective, curry no favor from me on the basis of their sheer laziness. That isn't to say the game isn't uncomfortable, the fuzzy aesthetic and heavy themes create a solid sense of dread throughout. But as a package I would broadly describe it as more sad than frightening. Lame attempts at horror aside, The game makes some fun grabs at symbolism and even manages to effectively foreshadow a couple of points via environmental storytelling. An impressive feat for a game this short. Returning briefly to the issue of length, though the short runtime does still prevent the game from pulling off anything really crazy, it tells a very complete story within its half hour of walking simulation. The game teases a sequel at the end, but honestly, I'm not really sure where they plan on going from here, unless they're going to start over with a new main character. And as usual, here's the updated list of rankings. Based on the way things are going, I don't know that I'll actually be able to finish any new games in November, so if that does indeed prove to be the case, next month's video might be more of a recap where I talk about some of the games I skipped over reviewing earlier this year. But yeah, that's all for now, so I'll see you guys next time.